Open the door, or we drag you out and tear this house apart." Captain Vance Harlan's voice blasted through the megaphone as the steel battering ram slammed into Serena Ellison's front door again. The impact rattled the windows and shook the hallway walls. 15 deputies spread across her front lawn like they owned the property, their boots grinding through the grass while neighbors gathered across the street with their phones raised, recording every second. Captain Vance Harlan stood at the center of the scene in his tactical vest, smirking as he signaled his men to hit the door again. "You're surrounded!" he shouted. "Nobody's coming to save you!" Inside the silent house, Serena Ellison did not touch the door. Instead, she calmly picked up her phone and dialed a number almost no civilian in America could reach, a direct line to the Pentagon the man outside had no idea she possessed. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. Through the white plantation blinds, Serena Ellison watched 15 armed officers spread across her front lawn. Their boots crushed the dew into the grass her father had tended for 40 years. Sheriff Colton Brooks stood in the center, hands on his belt, a fake smile plastered on his face. Next to him, Captain Vance Harlan gripped his radio with white knuckles, barking orders. "Miss Ellison, this is the county sheriff's department. Come out with your hands visible." Harlan's voice boomed through the megaphone. Serena's heart hammered fiercely in her chest, but her military training kicked in. She moved with purpose, not panic. Her phone was already recording video as she spoke in a clear, steady voice. She was documenting an unannounced police presence at her residence. Through the window, she saw Judge Vivian Hayes drop her gardening shears next door. The retired federal judge straightened her back, watching intently as more patrol cars pulled up. "We have authority to search these premises for stolen federal property," Harlan shouted. "Exit the building now." Serena grabbed her father's old iPad and started a second recording. Officers claimed search authority, but they had presented no warrant, no federal agents were visible, and no marked federal vehicles were present. She moved quickly through the house, locking each interior door. The home's original hardwood floors creaked beneath her feet, floors her father had restored by hand after retiring from the Army. She would not let them destroy his legacy without cause. Captain Vance Harlan and Sheriff Colton Brooks were deploying officers around all exits. No warrant had been shown. No paperwork had been presented. No prior notice of any investigation had been received. Her fingers flew across her phone screen. She sent a quick message to Judge Vivian Hayes. "Call everyone. Watch them." She hit send just as Harlan's voice crackled through the megaphone again. "This is your final warning. We will breach if necessary." Serena kept her voice steady for the recording. Captain Vance Harlan was threatening forced entry without displaying a warrant or probable cause. Outside, neighbors emerged from their homes. Phones appeared in their hands. Recording. Sheriff Colton Brooks stepped forward. All practiced charm and false concern. "Now, folks, please stay back," he called to the growing crowd. "This is a sensitive operation. We're just doing our jobs here." But Harlan was not bothering with the act. He stalked the perimeter, face reddening. Position units at every point. Nobody in or out. Serena documented it all. Officers were establishing siege positions. No probable cause had been stated. No warrant had been displayed. She saw Paige's blue Honda turn onto their street only to be stopped by a patrol car. Her daughter's face filled with shock as an officer forced her to park across the block. Her 19-year-old daughter was being prevented from approaching her own home. No cause had been given, no charges had been stated. The sun climbed higher, casting harsh shadows across her father's carefully maintained flower beds as boots trampled through them. More neighbors gathered. More phones recorded. Sheriff Colton Brooks kept performing for the audience, while Captain Vance Harlan grew increasingly agitated. "Miss Ellison," Harlan bellowed, "you are interfering with a federal investigation. Exit now or face obstruction charges." Serena spoke clearly into both devices. Captain Vance Harlan, was claiming federal authority. Still, no federal agents were present. No warrant had been presented. No legitimate chain of command was visible. She noticed one officer using oddly formal military terms as he radioed positions, but his phrasing was wrong. The kind of mistake someone would make trying to sound official without proper training. Her father had taught her to spot those tells. The officer at the northwest corner was using incorrect military terminology, inconsistent with standard federal protocols. Through the window, she saw Judge Vivian Hayes on her phone, likely calling every legal contact she had. The retired judge's presence was a blessing. She knew exactly what proper procedure should look like. And this was not it. Harlan's voice rose another notch. "Secure the power lines. I want this place dark." Captain Vance Harlan was ordering utilities cut without warrant or cause. Serena moved efficiently through the house, backing up her recordings to cloud storage. The light streamed through windows that had witnessed 50 years of her family's history. Her father's medals still hung on the study wall. His files still filled the cabinets. Whatever they wanted, they were not going to get it through intimidation. Sheriff Colton Brooks' voice drifted through the walls, all honey-coated menace. "Ms. Ellison, let's handle this reasonably. No one needs to get hurt here." But Serena had seen enough. This was not a legitimate police action. This was a coordinated, illegal siege in broad daylight, and she would not open her door without proof of their authority. 15 armed officers were surrounding a private residence. No warrant, no federal presence, no legitimate authority demonstrated. Sheriff Colton Brooks and Captain Vance Harlan were leading an unauthorized operation. She stood in her father's study, surrounded by the life he had built, and faced the truth of what was happening. They thought she would break under pressure. They thought fear and public humiliation would make her surrender her rights. They were wrong. Through the blinds, she watched Harlan grip his tactical vest, fury building in his face. Brooks kept smiling for the cameras while radioing orders. And all around her father's house, armed men waited for her to crack. Serena moved through the darkened house with practiced precision, her steps silent on the hardwood floors. Outside, Harlan's men pounded their fists against windows and walls, trying to rattle her nerve. The sound echoed through every room like war drums. "Power's cut, Sheriff," a voice called from the side yard. "Want us to hit the water next?" Through the study blinds, Serena watched Judge Vivian Hayes on her phone, pacing her garden in her worn denim work clothes. The retired judge's voice carried across the lawn as she rallied support. "Pastor Ellis, get your deacon board down here right now. These boys need to know they're being watched." Serena pulled her father's old army footlocker from beneath his desk. The combination lock clicked softly. Her birthday. Inside lay his service papers, medals, and the fireproof document case he had made her promise to protect. She tucked it into the hidden wall panel he had built behind his bookshelf, a space that looked like nothing more than shadow unless you knew where to press. "Ms. Ellison," Sheriff Colton Brooks' voice oozed false concern. "Your continued obstruction will be noted in our report. Think about how this looks." She knew exactly how it looked. That was the point. 15 armed officers were surrounding a black woman's home without cause or warrant, but they had not counted on her neighbors having phones and memories and voices. From her bedroom window, she spotted Avery at the police line. Her daughter held her press pass high. "That's my house. You can't keep me from my own house." An officer shoved her back. "Media stays behind the line." Captain's orders. "Captains?" "I live there." Avery's voice cracked with fury. "That's my mother in there." Serena wanted to run to her daughter, but training kept her focused. She methodically photographed every window's view, documenting officer positions and faces. Her phone automatically backed up each image to 3 separate cloud accounts. They could not erase this. The house grew warmer as the disabled air conditioning went still. Sweat trickled down her neck, but she kept moving. In the kitchen, she found her father's old battery-powered camping lantern. Its beam cut through the artificial darkness as she worked. She dialed her attorney's office, speaking clearly into the voicemail. This was Serena Ellison. She was recording unlawful police action at her residence. 15 armed officers were present. No warrant had been shown. Power had been cut. Her daughter had been denied access. Judge Vivian Hayes was witnessing. Please respond. More vehicles arrived outside. Not the promised federal agents, but local media vans. Harlan's voice rose in frustration. Clear these civilians back. Establish a 100-yard perimeter. But the crowd held firm. Serena recognized faces from her father's veterans group, church members in their Sunday clothes, neighbors who had known her since childhood. They stood in clusters on the sidewalk, phones raised. Witnesses to every move. Last warning, Miss Ellison, Harlan shouted. You're only making this harder on yourself. She noted how he said harder on yourself, not worse for yourself. The phrasing was wrong. Real federal agents had precise language protocols. These men were play-acting badly. Through her father's study window, she watched an officer direct units using mangled military terms. Alpha Team, establish defensive positions at Vector Point Charlie. It was gibberish, the kind of talk someone would use after watching too many action movies. They were trying to make her look unstable. Judge Vivian Hayes' voice carried from next door. Getting all those news cameras here before they even show a warrant, making it a spectacle. The judge was right. They wanted her to break, to run out screaming, to give them an excuse. Instead, Serena documented everything with military precision. Positions, statements, witnesses. The house grew stuffier as the summer sun beat down. Officers circled like wolves, testing windows, rattling doors. Sheriff Colton Brooks kept up his performance for the cameras. Now, folks, I know this looks concerning, but we have information about serious federal violations. Miss Ellison just needs to cooperate. But he still showed no warrant, made no specific charges, presented no federal credentials. In the study, Serena pulled her father's old Bible from his desk drawer. The leather was worn soft from years of handling. Her father had read from it every morning, right up until the day he died. If armed men ever came to the house in daylight, he had told her once, "You use this number. Only in daylight, baby girl, that's when they think they're untouchable." She had thought it was his PTSD talking. He had grown paranoid near the end, haunted by something he would not name, but he had made her memorize where to look. Inside the cover, behind the dedication page, sweat dripped onto the thin pages as she opened it by lantern light. There, taped carefully to the inside cover, was a single sheet of paper. On it, written in her father's precise hand, was a phone number she had never seen before and 3 words: Pentagon. Direct line. In the hushed darkness of her father's study, Serena's fingers trembled slightly as she dialed the number from the Bible. The lantern cast long shadows across the room while heavy boots scraped against her front porch. She could hear Harlan's rising frustration through the walls. "Final warning, Miss Ellison. Don't make us force entry." Serena pressed the phone to her ear, heart pounding. 1 ring, 2 rings. On the 3rd, a crisp voice answered. "Office of Special Operations Oversight. My name is Serena Ellison," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her body. "I'm calling regarding service number 874194421, Master Sergeant Garrett Ellison." A pause. "Go ahead." Serena took a deep breath and spoke the phrase her father had made her memorize. "Daylight breach of Protocol 7. The line went dead silent. When the voice returned, it was sharp with alertness. "Status report. Unauthorized domestic retrieval operation in progress at her residence," Serena reported, falling back on her military training. 15 local officers were present, led by Sheriff Colton Brooks and Captain Vance Harlan. No warrant had been shown. Full perimeter established. Power cut. Attempts to isolate from witnesses. "Are you recording?" "Yes. Multiple devices. Cloud backup." "Good. Maintain documentation. Do not surrender any materials. Stand by." Through the window, Serena watched Harlan gesture angrily at his men. "Get those bolt cutters. She wants to play games. We'll show her games. The Pentagon voice returned. Ms. Ellison, repeat after me loud enough for your recordings. I formally request immediate warrant verification through federal channels. Serena raised her voice clearly. I formally request immediate warrant verification through federal channels. Again, she repeated it louder, making sure both her phones caught it. Outside, a police radio crackled with new traffic. Different voices, different tone. An officer rushed up to Brooks with a phone. The sheriff's face changed as he listened, color draining from his confident expression. Ms. Ellison, the Pentagon voice continued, state investigators have been notified. Federal observers are en route. Maintain your position. Document any attempts at forced entry. Do not open doors without visual confirmation of proper credentials. Through her window, Serena watched Harlan grab his radio. All units, expedite search positions. We need to complete this operation now. But the other officers had noticed the change in radio traffic. They shifted uneasily. Some lowered their weapons. Others checked phones. The crowd of witnesses had grown larger. Avery held her phone high, narrating everything for her live stream. They had cut the power to intimidate her. No warrant, no probable cause, just 15 armed men surrounding a black woman's home in broad daylight. Judge Vivian Hayes' commanding presence drew neighbors closer as she spoke. Keep those cameras rolling. Document every face, every vehicle, every action. Truth needs witnesses. Harlan's frustration boiled over. He pulled 2 deputies aside, speaking in harsh whispers while pointing toward the back of the house. They nodded and began moving along the perimeter, trying to look casual. Target address is now flagged, the Pentagon voice informed Serena. All body camera footage has been marked for preservation. Local dispatch has been notified of federal interest. State Internal Affairs is responding. Through the window, Serena spotted the first black SUV rolling slowly down her street. Then another, and another. The vehicles moved with quiet authority. Government plates caught the sunlight. Men in suits emerged, accompanied by state police investigators in tactical gear. The change in the officers' demeanor was instant and dramatic. Those who had been shouting threats now stared at their boots. Others busied themselves with equipment, avoiding eye contact with the arriving authorities. Sheriff Colton Brooks's phone rang again. This time his face did not just pale, it crumpled. He grabbed Harlan's arm, whispering urgently. The captain's aggressive stance deflated as he listened. Ms. Ellison, the Pentagon voice returned. Federal observers are on scene. State investigators will establish a new perimeter. Remember, do not open your door without proper warrant verification from appropriate authorities. Understood, Serena replied, watching more official vehicles arrive. The street was filling with serious-faced men and women, carrying badges that made her local police force step back. Avery's live stream captured it all. State police were here now. The sheriff looked like he was about to be sick. Captain Vance Harlan had just thrown his tactical vest in his car. The officers who had surrounded her house with such intimidating authority now looked like schoolboys caught in a dangerous prank. Some hurried to their vehicles. Others stood frozen, uncertain whether leaving or staying would make things worse. Judge Vivian Hayes' voice rose above the confusion. Now, we'll see what a real warrant looks like, if one exists at all. Through her father's study window, Serena watched the men who had come to terrorize her transform from predators to prey. The black SUVs kept coming, their tinted windows reflecting the harsh daylight. Each new arrival made the local officers shrink further into themselves, their earlier bravado evaporating in the summer heat. Under the harsh sun, Sheriff Colton Brooks's polished facade began to crack. State investigators in dark suits moved methodically through the crowd of officers, collecting body cameras and phones. Federal observers with stern expressions took notes, while internal affairs personnel separated deputies for questioning. This was a legitimate emergency response, Brooks announced loudly, forcing a smile that did not reach his eyes. "We received credible information about stolen federal property." "Then you can produce the warrant," a state investigator cut in, her badge gleaming, "along with the federal authorization for this operation." Brooks's smile faltered. "Given the time-sensitive nature, there is no warrant." Judge Vivian Hayes called out from her position near the property line. "No paperwork at all. Just 15 armed men surrounding a woman's home without cause." Captain Vance Harlan paced near his vehicle, barking at younger officers. "Stop standing around like idiots. Secure your gear and maintain position until—" Another investigator interrupted. "All personnel need to remain exactly where they are. Equipment stays in place for documentation." Harlan's face reddened. "Now listen here, Captain." The investigator's voice hardened. "That was not a suggestion. Your aggressive tone is already raising concerns about command conduct during this operation." Neighbors pressed closer, phones recording every exchange. Avery's live stream captured Harlan's barely contained rage as he stomped away from his subordinates. Her commentary was precise and damning. The captain, who had threatened to break down her mother's door, could not even look at federal badges without losing his composure. Inside the house, Serena watched through her windows as the scene transformed. The officers who had surrounded her home now stood uncertainly in small clusters, their earlier bravado replaced by nervous glances. Some whispered into phones. Others stared at their boots while investigators collected their tactical gear. "Ms. Ellison," Judge Vivian Hayes called from outside, "I have a state internal affairs investigator here. Would you like me to verify their credentials?" "Yes," Serena responded through her security system. "Please check their ID and badge number." The investigator held up her credentials for Vivian's careful inspection. The judge examined them thoroughly, then nodded. "Legitimate state authority, Serena. Agent Brooks Sinclair, Internal Affairs Division." "Ms. Ellison," Agent Brooks Sinclair spoke clearly, "we've secured the perimeter and removed tactical units. Would you be willing to exit and provide a statement? Judge Vivian Hayes can remain present as a witness." Serena watched Brooks receive what appeared to be devastating news from another investigator. His face drained of color as the man explained something about federal jurisdiction and civil rights violations. Several officers who had participated in the siege were now sitting in their vehicles looking shell-shocked as their body cameras were collected for evidence. "I'll come out," Serena decided, "but I want Judge Vivian Hayes to meet me at the door." Vivian moved to the porch while investigators cleared a path. When Serena finally opened her door, the crowd of neighbors erupted in supportive calls. Several church elders had arrived to stand witness. Veterans from down the street positioned themselves strategically around the property line, watching the increasingly nervous officers with hard eyes. "Ms. Ellison," Agent Brooks Sinclair began, "we will need to document the sequence of events, starting with the first arrival of local units." "I have complete video and audio recordings," Serena replied. "Multiple angles backed up to secure storage." Brooks tried to approach, but was intercepted by federal observers. "Miss Ellison, if we could just discuss this misunderstanding." "Sheriff!" A stern voice cut through the chaos. A tall man in a crisp suit emerged from one of the government SUVs. "I don't believe you want to have that conversation without counsel present." The man moved purposefully through the crowd, showing a federal ID to the investigators before approaching Serena. "Ms. Ellison, I'm Special Agent Garrett Voss, Pentagon Inspector General's office. Your father once trusted me. We need to speak privately." Serena studied him carefully. "You knew my father?" "Yes," Voss replied quietly. "And I need you to understand something crucial. This raid wasn't about arresting you. They were searching for something specific in your house, something they needed to retrieve before federal oversight could reach it." Serena's blood ran cold. She turned and ran back inside, taking the stairs 2 at a time to reach her father's study. The room appeared undisturbed at first glance, but when she moved closer to the old oak paneling, she saw it. Fresh, scratch marks marred the wood near a concealed seam. The hidden compartment her father had never shown her was now exposed. The panel had been pried partly open. Her hands shook as she examined the damaged wood. Through the window, she could hear Harlan shouting at someone, his voice cracking with desperation. More federal vehicles arrived, their lights flashing silently in the afternoon sun. Neighbors continued documenting everything while investigators collected evidence that would destroy careers and reveal corruption. But none of that mattered as much as the violated panel before her. This was not just about an illegal raid anymore. Someone had known exactly what they were looking for in her father's study. Someone had been willing to orchestrate an armed siege to find it. Filtered sunlight cast long shadows across the study's hardwood floor as Serena knelt beside the damaged wall panel. Special Agent Garrett Voss stood near the doorway while Judge Vivian Hayes examined the splintered edges of the wood. Avery documented everything with her camera, capturing the violated space that had once been her grandfather's sanctuary. "Someone knew exactly where to look," Serena said, running her fingers along the scratched surface. Fresh wood dust sprinkled onto the floor. They must have searched during the confusion outside. Voss moved closer, his expression grim. "The panel design is military grade, the kind used in secure facilities. Your father modified it himself." "I never even knew it existed," Serena admitted. She pressed carefully along the damaged section, feeling for anything the intruders might have missed. Her fingers caught on a slight irregularity. "Wait." Judge Vivian Hayes leaned in. "What do you see, Serena?" "It's not just one layer." Serena traced the hidden seam. "There's another compartment behind this one." She applied pressure to specific points, remembering how her father had always emphasized the importance of backup plans. A soft click rewarded her patience. A second panel slid open, revealing a shallow space untouched by the earlier search. Inside lay several items carefully wrapped in oilcloth. Serena removed them one by one, laying them on her father's old desk while Avery recorded. A challenge coin. Voss identified the first item. "That's from our old investigative unit." He picked it up, turning it to catch the light. "I haven't seen one of these in 20 years. Serena unwrapped a bundle of papers covered in her father's precise handwriting. The notes were filled with strings of numbers and letters, clearly coded. A storage locker number was written clearly on one corner, M47. Below it, 2 words stood out in block letters, Brass Locust. "What does that mean?" Avery asked, zooming in on the phrase. "It was a classified designation," Voss replied quietly. "Something your grandfather and I investigated before." He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. At the bottom of the compartment lay an old photograph, its edges worn soft with age. Serena recognized her father immediately, younger in his dress uniform, standing proudly beside a fresh-faced Garrett Voss. A third man stood with them, but his face had been deliberately scratched out of the image. "Who was he?" Serena asked, holding up the photo. Voss's jaw tightened. "Someone who betrayed everything we were trying to protect. Your father and I were part of an internal inquiry into stolen military technology, advanced targeting systems being diverted through domestic channels. We had proof, documentation, witnesses, but before we could present our findings, everything fell apart." Judge Vivian Hayes moved to the window, watching the investigators still processing the scene outside. "Is that why they tried to destroy his reputation? To discredit any evidence he might have kept?" "They did more than that," Voss said. "They buried the entire investigation, classified everything under national security, made your father look unstable when he tried to push back. I should have done more to help him, but I let them intimidate me into silence." Serena stared at her father's coded notes, anger rising in her throat. So today was not just about harassing her. They thought he had left proof here, evidence that could still hurt them after all these years. The crack of a gunshot shattered the moment. Glass exploded from somewhere outside, followed by screams and shouts. Everyone dropped instinctively as Avery rushed to the window. "Someone shot Mrs. Donnelly's camera rig," she reported, ducking low. The big one she was using to record the whole street. Serena crawled to another window, staying below the sill. Across the street, she glimpsed a dark figure disappearing between houses as investigators and federal agents sprinted after them. Car engines roared to life, tires squealing as vehicles peeled away. "Everyone stay down," Judge Vivian Hayes ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. "They're trying to destroy video evidence." Voss pulled out his phone, rapidly texting commands. "I'm calling in additional federal support, but this confirms what I feared. The conspiracy reaches beyond Brooks and the sheriff's office. They have resources, coordination, and they're moving faster than official channels can respond." Outside, agents secured the perimeter while state police blocked off surrounding streets. Neighbors huddled behind cars and porches, their phones still recording despite the threat. Mrs. Donnelly stood defiantly beside her destroyed camera, describing the shooter to investigators, while other residents backed up her account. "We need to get to that storage locker," Voss said urgently. "Whatever your father hid there, they'll be looking for it too, and they just proved they're willing to use lethal force in broad daylight." Serena gathered the items from the compartment, wrapping them carefully. The sun was lower now, casting orange light across the study's walls. Soon darkness would give their enemies more advantages. "Avery, grab your backup drives and go bag," she instructed. "Judge Vivian Hayes, can you coordinate with the neighbors? Make sure everyone's footage is secured and distributed." "Already on it," Vivian assured her. "I'll have copies spread across every church computer and veterans group in the county by nightfall. No one's erasing what happened here today." "We should move now," Voss urged, checking his weapon. "Use the chaos as cover while investigators have the area locked down. I have a secure vehicle 2 blocks over." Serena took a final look at her father's study, at the violated panel that had protected his secrets for so long. The home that had witnessed today's siege would have to wait. There were bigger battles ahead. "Let's go," she said, leading Avery toward the back stairs. "Time to find out what else my father left behind." The storage facility's concrete walls radiated afternoon heat as Voss pulled into the gravel lot. Chain-link fencing topped with razor wire surrounded the property, and security cameras tracked their movement from metal poles. The place looked deserted except for a bored attendant scrolling on his phone in the air-conditioned office. "Stay alert," Voss said, shifting into park. "They'll be checking facilities like this once they realize we left the house." He handed Serena a key. "Unit M47 is in the back corner. Your father arranged access for both of us years ago." Serena studied the key, its brass surface worn from years of waiting. "You knew about this place the whole time." "I knew he had contingencies," Voss admitted, "but not the specifics. Your father was careful about compartmentalizing information, especially after things went bad." They walked down the rows of identical orange doors, gravel crunching under their feet. The sun beat down mercilessly. Avery kept her phone ready, documenting everything while scanning for threats. Unit M47 looked like all the others. Weathered paint, heavy padlock, roll-up door. Serena inserted the key with steady hands. The lock clicked open. Voss helped her lift the door. Metal rattled on metal. Stale air wafted out. The space inside was cramped but meticulously organized. File boxes lined metal shelves along both walls. A military footlocker sat against the back and sealed envelopes were stacked on top. "This is everything he couldn't keep at home," Voss said quietly. "Everything they tried to bury." Avery started photographing the labels and contents while Serena opened the first envelope. Her father's familiar handwriting filled the page. "Serena, if you're reading this, they finally came for the house. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you more while I was alive, but keeping you safely ignorant was the only way to protect you. What you need to know now is that everything they said about me was a lie. The instability, the paranoid accusations, it was all engineered to discredit what I discovered." She had to pause, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Voss gave her space, examining the footlocker's contents. He pulled out a canvas duffel wrapped in oilcloth. His service weapon, Voss explained, carefully unwrapping it. Disassembled and preserved. He knew you might need protection one day. Serena forced herself to focus on the letter again. In 2002, I uncovered evidence that classified military targeting systems were being stolen and diverted through domestic law enforcement channels. The technology was worth millions on the black market. Local agencies provided cover through inflated training budgets, while private security contractors handled distribution. I gathered proof, filed reports through proper channels. Then 3 soldiers died during an unauthorized test of the stolen components. I remember that incident, Voss said. It was classified as a training accident. Your father tried to link it to the theft ring, but suddenly all his evidence disappeared. His security clearance was revoked. His mental state was questioned. They made him look delusional. Avery held up a file. There's documentation here, financial records, shipping manifests, internal memos, all connecting local officials to something called Prairie Shield Security. A private contractor? Voss confirmed. They supplied tactical training to police departments across 3 states, perfect cover for moving stolen tech. Serena found more letters, each dated and sealed, instructions, locations, contact numbers. Her father had prepared for every contingency. In one envelope, she found an old key card and building plans for a county training facility. The footlocker yielded more evidence, photographs of midnight deliveries, recorded conversations on micro-cassettes, ledgers tracking payments through shell companies. Her father had documented everything, while they systematically destroyed his reputation. Some of these records implicate current officials, Avery said, scanning documents with her phone. Sheriff Colton Brooks' name appears multiple times, and Councilman Victor Kane, he's listed as a financial backer of Prairie Shield. That explains the coordinated response today, Voss said. They're still protecting the operation after all these years. Your father hid evidence that could expose dozens of people in power. Serena checked her watch. We need to move. They'll trace us here eventually. They quickly sorted through the remaining materials, taking only the most crucial evidence. Serena packed the letters and key documents into her bag while Avery backed up her photos to encrypted cloud storage. Voss wrapped the disassembled sidearm back in its oilcloth. What about the rest? Avery asked, looking at the shelves of remaining files. We'll have to come back with a proper team, Voss said. Right now, we just need enough proof to force an official investigation. They carefully closed the unit, replacing the lock. The lot was still empty except for the attendant's car. Everything looked normal, undisturbed. Voss drove them back toward the main road, taking a different route than they had arrived. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement. They were less than a mile from the storage facility when Serena noticed it in the side mirror, a black SUV pulling out from a side street, matching their speed. We've got company, she said quietly, watching the vehicle settle into position behind them. The black SUV surged forward without warning, ramming into their rear quarter panel with crushing force. Metal screamed against metal as their car spun wildly toward the concrete median. Avery clutched the evidence bag to her chest while Voss fought the steering wheel. Brace! Serena shouted, grabbing the headrest as they skidded sideways. Their vehicle slammed into the median with a sickening crunch, airbags exploding in a cloud of white powder. For a moment, everything was chaos and ringing ears. Then Serena heard car doors opening behind them. Police! Show your hands! A voice bellowed, but something was wrong about the tone. Too aggressive, too eager. Through the cracked side mirror, Serena saw 4 men approaching with weapons drawn. They wore plain clothes and tactical vests, but no badges or proper identification. Their movements were uncoordinated, nothing like real police procedure. Avery, stay down, Serena ordered, reaching for the duffel bag. Her fingers found the oilcloth wrap containing her father's disassembled sidearm. Years of military training took over as she quickly joined the pieces together. Voss shifted painfully beside her, blood seeping from a graze on his upper arm where glass had cut him. "They're not real officers," he whispered. "The approach is all wrong." The fake officers spread out around their damaged car. One of them aimed directly at Avery through the rear window. That was another mistake. No legitimate officer would target an unarmed teenager first. Serena finished assembling the weapon just as one attacker reached for her door handle. She kicked it open hard, catching him in the knee. He stumbled backward, cursing. Serena used the moment to slide out low, keeping the car between her and the other gunmen. "Federal agent!" Voss shouted, drawing his own weapon despite his injury. "Stand down!" Instead of complying, one of the attackers opened fire. The sound was deafening in the confines of the intersection. Civilians screamed and scattered. Car horns blared as drivers abandoned their vehicles for cover. Serena moved with careful precision. Nothing flashy or dramatic. She took measured shots only when she had clear lines of fire, forcing the attackers to duck behind parked cars. Her goal was not to pursue. It was to protect her family and survive. "Avery, move to the median when I tell you," she called. "Keep the evidence secure." A delivery truck screeched to a halt at an angle, accidentally blocking one gunman's position. The driver bailed out and ran, leaving the engine running. Avery used the distraction to scramble over the center console, still gripping the document bag. "Now!" Serena laid down, covering fire, while Avery sprinted to the median's concrete barrier. Voss provided additional suppression, his shots careful and precise despite his wound. One attacker tried to flank their position but slipped on scattered glass. As he stumbled, something fell from his tactical vest. A black police-issue radio earpiece. It bounced once and slid toward the gutter, clearly stamped with county inventory markings. Avery had her phone out, recording faces and details whenever she could safely peek over the barrier. "Got clear shots of two of them," she whispered, "and their vehicle plates." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The attackers heard it too. Their coordinated assault began to fall apart. "We need to move," one of them shouted. "Now!" They retreated in stages, two providing cover while two ran back to their SUV. Serena did not chase or take unnecessary risks. She maintained defensive fire only when they presented clear threats. The black SUV peeled away just as the first legitimate police units appeared at the far end of the intersection. Serena carefully set her weapon down and raised her hands, making sure approaching officers could see she was complying. "Federal agent," Voss called out again, displaying his credentials. "We were attacked by armed suspects impersonating law enforcement." The scene quickly filled with real police cars, paramedics, and crime scene units. But Serena noticed how some officers exchanged looks when they saw the county-issued earpiece. A few touched their own radio sets self-consciously. She realized they could not trust any local evidence chain. The corruption went too deep. Traffic backed up for blocks as investigators photographed bullet casings and impact marks. Paramedics bandaged Voss's arm while Avery gave a preliminary statement, carefully omitting any mention of the storage facility or documents. Serena stood beside their ruined car, watching the controlled chaos of the crime scene. The attack had been professional but rushed, likely triggered when someone spotted them leaving the storage facility. The fake officers had expected an easy ambush against unprepared targets. Instead, they had faced trained resistance and fled when witnesses appeared. But they would try again, probably somewhere more isolated next time. Serena retrieved her father's gun and the spent casings from her position, legally documenting everything through proper channels. But she kept the earpiece separate, wrapped in a clean handkerchief. That piece of evidence would go directly to federal authorities, along with the rest of what they had recovered from the locker. A detective approached with a notebook, ready to take her statement. Serena composed her face into a calm mask, prepared to share only the minimum required by law. The real investigation would have to happen outside local jurisdiction. The evening sun cast long shadows through Judge Vivian Hayes' kitchen windows as Voss winced under Carla's careful cleaning of his arm wound. The retired nurse from 3 doors down had come as soon as Vivian called, bringing her medical kit and decades of experience treating everything from scraped knees to gunshot grazes. "Hold still," Carla muttered, dabbing antiseptic on the cut. "At least it's shallow." Across the kitchen table, Avery's fingers flew over her laptop keyboard, creating backup after backup of the evidence they had recovered. Her phone lay beside her, streaming the local news coverage of both the morning siege and afternoon shooting. "This is garbage," Avery said, gesturing at the screen. "Listen to how they're spinning it." The news anchor's voice filled the kitchen. "Questions remain about this morning's law enforcement operation at the home of a local resident with alleged ties to missing federal property. Sheriff Colton Brooks's office describes the incident as an unfortunate miscommunication that escalated unnecessarily." "Miscommunication." Serena's voice was quiet but sharp. "They surrounded my house with 15 armed men and no warrant. They're already trying to bury it," Voss said, checking his secure phone. "My contacts say the department's media response team is in full damage control." Vivian stood at her window, phone pressed to her ear as she coordinated with community leaders. "Yes, Pastor Ellis. We need witnesses. Bring anyone you trust. These people operate in shadows. We're going to shine light on every corner." Serena's own phone buzzed with notifications. Anonymous accounts were spreading selected pieces of her background online. Her military service twisted to suggest instability. Her father's final years used to imply hereditary paranoia. Her home security measures painted as signs of dangerous obsession. "They got my bank records somehow," Avery said. "Scrolling through social media. They're trying to make it look like we're hiding something." A knock at the front door made everyone tense. Vivian checked through the peephole, then opened it cautiously. Mrs. Alvarez from across the street stood there, wringing her hands. "I'm sorry," she said, voice shaking. "2 men came to my house. They said I shouldn't talk about what I saw this morning. They said it could affect my son's teaching job at the high school." "Come in," Vivian said firmly. "You're not alone in this." As evening approached, more neighbors arrived. The retired Marine who lived on the corner, 3 pastors from local churches, the president of the neighborhood association, fellow veterans who had served with Serena's father. They formed a protective circle of witnesses, taking shifts to watch both Serena's house and Vivian's through the night. "They can't intimidate all of us," Vivian said, serving coffee to the volunteers in her living room. "This community stands together." The side door opened and closed quietly. Lieutenant Devin Reed stepped into the kitchen, still in uniform but without his utility belt. He held his hands open, showing he was unarmed. "I came alone," he said softly. "What happened today was wrong. Some of us want to help make it right." Voss moved to put himself between Reed and the evidence files. "Why should we trust you?" "Because I've spent 15 years watching this department rot from the inside," Reed replied. "Because I have a teenage son, too, and I don't want him growing up in a town where police can lay siege to an innocent woman's home." Serena studied him carefully. She had seen Reed during the morning raid. He had been one of the few officers who seemed uncomfortable with the operation. "I have information," Reed continued. "Sheriff Colton Brooks is meeting Councilman Victor Kane tonight at the old Civic Warehouse on Industrial Drive, the one that's supposed to be closed for renovation. Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon." "Could be a trap," Voss warned. "Could be our only chance to see who Brooks is really working for," Serena countered. She turned to Reed. "Why tell us this?" "Because I took an oath to protect and serve," Reed said. "Not to help corrupt men hide their crimes." He headed for the door, then paused. "Be careful. Kane isn't just some politician. He has private security contractors on his payroll." After Reed left, Serena divided the evidence into separate packages, giving copies to Vivian for safekeeping. If anything happens, release everything to every media outlet on this list. Voss checked his weapon while Avery packed her camera gear. Outside, the witness network settled in for their night watch, determined to protect their neighbors from further intimidation. As the sun set behind the trees, Serena led Voss and Avery to her car. The warehouse was on the edge of town, far from streetlights and witnesses. Whatever they found there would have to be documented perfectly. There would not be a second chance. Vivian stood in her doorway, straight-backed and resolute. Remember what your father always said, record everything, trust your training, and never let them see fear. Serena nodded, then slipped behind the wheel. As they pulled away from the curb, porch lights clicked on up and down the street, silent signals of solidarity from neighbors refusing to look away. Darkness cloaked the industrial district as Serena crouched behind a stack of wooden pallets, her muscles tense from holding still. The abandoned warehouse loomed ahead, its broken windows like empty eye sockets in the dim security lighting. Voss knelt beside her while Avery balanced her camera on a stabilizer, the lens focused on the loading dock. "Movement," Voss whispered, pointing to a black SUV rolling silently down the access road. Headlights off, the vehicle stopped at the warehouse's side entrance. Sheriff Colton Brooks stepped out, straightening his civilian jacket and glancing around the empty lot. Behind him, an unmarked white van pulled up, its government plates visible in the weak light. Councilman Victor Kane emerged from the van's passenger side, his expensive suit incongruous against the decrepit setting. Two men in tactical gear flanked him, their postures screaming private security training. "Recording!" Avery breathed, her camera capturing every detail. Serena adjusted the directional microphone, aiming it carefully through a gap in the pallets. The audio feed crackled in her earpiece as Kane and Brooks converged in the shadows. "This is becoming expensive," Kane said, his cultured voice tight with irritation. "The Pentagon investigator was never supposed to surface. Now, we have federal attention we can't afford." "We can contain it," Brooks insisted. "Once we recover the drive." Kane cut him off. "You assured me this morning's operation would secure everything. Instead, you've managed to create exactly the kind of spectacle we've spent decades avoiding." Voss leaned closer to Serena, his voice barely audible. "He's running damage control. Brass Locust must still be active." Brooks' response carried clearly through the microphone. "My men are monitoring every move she makes. The minute she accesses the evidence, we'll know." "See that you do," Kane replied. "I've invested too much in this pipeline to let it collapse now. The buyers expect regular shipments, and our law enforcement partners require their cut." Serena's hand tightened on the microphone as the pieces clicked together. Her father's investigation had not died. The weapons technology theft network had simply evolved, using police departments as cover for moving classified material. "The county systems will be frozen by federal oversight within days," Brooks said. "We need to move fast." "Then stop talking and find that drive," Kane snapped. "Use whatever resources necessary. If she's anything like her father, she'll try to expose everything." A car engine rumbled in the distance. Voss tensed. "We need to move now." Patrol lights suddenly flashed at both ends of the street, casting strobing red and blue across the warehouse walls. Serena quickly packed the microphone while Avery secured her camera. "Back route," Voss whispered urgently. "Through the alley." They slipped between buildings as radio static crackled behind them. The timing was too perfect. Someone had spotted them and called it in. Serena thought of Lieutenant Devin Reed's convenient tip and felt sick. The betrayal should not have surprised her, but it did. They emerged onto a parallel street where Voss had parked their backup vehicle. As they pulled away, more police units converged on the warehouse. The night felt alive with predatory energy. "Someone was waiting for us to take the bait," Voss said, checking the mirrors constantly as they drove. "Reed played us perfectly. The whole thing was staged." Serena agreed. "They wanted to confirm we had evidence worth burning. Avery reviewed the footage on her camera's screen. At least we got what we came for. Kane admitted to the weapons pipeline. And Brooks... It won't matter if we don't make it back, Voss cut in. Taking another turn to shake any potential tails, Serena watched familiar houses blur past, each darkened window now a potential surveillance point. How many neighbors had been pressured or paid to report her movements? The thought of that invisible net closing around her family made her skin crawl. They turned onto Vivian Street just before midnight. Orange light painted the clouds ahead, and Serena's heart dropped. Flames licked skyward from Mrs. Alvarez's detached garage, the same neighbor who had been threatened earlier that day. Fire trucks had not arrived yet. Several witnesses from their protection network were already running with garden hoses, but the blaze had too much of a head start. The message was clear. Cooperation would be punished. Mrs. Alvarez stood on her front lawn in a bathrobe, hands pressed to her mouth as she watched her garage burn. Her teenage son held her shoulders, his face rigid with anger. The air stank of accelerant. This was no accident. Serena stepped out of the car, and Mrs. Alvarez's eyes met hers across the yard. The fear there was quickly replaced by something harder: determination. She straightened her spine and walked deliberately towards Serena, despite everything the fire represented. "They think this will make us stay quiet," Mrs. Alvarez said, her voice carrying clearly through the crackling flames. "They are wrong." The firefighters' flashing lights painted the neighborhood in harsh reds and blues. Smoke drifted between houses as crews doused the last flames in Mrs. Alvarez's garage. The acrid smell of melted plastic and scorched wood hung thick in the midnight air. Vivian moved through clusters of neighbors in her robe and slippers, her voice steady and reassuring. "Stay together. Document everything. We'll have patrols watching all night." She carried herself with the same authority she had wielded from the bench, turning fear into resolve. Serena studied the destroyed garage. The fire's message was crude but effective: shut up or burn. She touched the blackened door frame, finding accelerant residue still tacky on the wood. This was not random. It was professional intimidation, barely disguised as vandalism. "Mom," Avery called from Vivian's front porch, her laptop casting blue light across her face. "The siege footage is ready. Should I release it now?" "Do it," Serena said. "All channels." Inside Vivian's living room, neighbors crowded around Avery's screen. The edited video showed the morning's events with damning clarity. 15 armed officers surrounding a home without cause. Brooks's false claims of authority. Harlan's escalating threats. The timestamps and multiple angles left no room for denial. "Send it to every local station," Voss said, working his phone. "I've got federal contacts standing by to preserve it before anyone tries scrubbing it." Vivian returned from comforting Mrs. Alvarez. Her expression hardened as she watched the footage. "I'm going on camera right now. The press needs to hear from someone they can't dismiss." Within 30 minutes, news vans arrived. Vivian stood in her front yard, poised and dignified despite the late hour. The camera lights caught the silver in her hair as she spoke with quiet fury. "I witnessed today's illegal siege as a retired federal judge. What I saw was a coordinated abuse of power targeting a respected neighbor, a former soldier and single mother. Hours later, apparent retaliation destroyed property while armed men tried to silence witnesses. This corruption must end." Her words carried the weight of decades on the bench. The reporters leaned in, hungry for more. Vivian gave them exactly what they needed: clear, quotable condemnation from a trusted voice. Voss stepped away from a phone call, his face brightening. "Emergency preservation orders just came through. They're locking down body cameras, radio logs, everything. Harlan is being called in for immediate questioning." "The warehouse audio?" Serena asked. "Submitted with chain of custody documentation. That earpiece they dropped links directly to county inventory. Combined with Kane's recorded admissions about the weapons pipeline, it was enough for federal warrants by morning." More news crews arrived as Avery's footage spread online. The story was breaking faster than anyone could contain it. Serena watched viewer counts climbing, shares multiplying, outraged comments flooding in. The truth was loose. Inside Vivian's kitchen, neighbors coordinated watch rotations while brewing endless coffee. No one planned to sleep. Mrs. Alvarez sat at the table with her son, giving a statement to a sympathetic detective about the garage fire. Other residents shared video clips from their phones, building a documented timeline of the day's events. Near 1 in the morning, Voss hung up from another call. County servers are being flagged for preservation. IT staff are locked out of deletions or modifications. He managed a tired smile. Brooks's whole structure is starting to crack. By dawn, he and Kane will be facing federal investigators they can't control. Serena found Avery curled in an armchair, still monitoring response to her footage. Dark circles showed under her eyes, but she radiated fierce determination. The same strength Serena's father had shown when facing corrupt power. "You should rest," Serena said softly. "Not yet," Avery said, refreshing her feeds. "People need to see this, all of it." For the first time since morning, Serena felt hope pushing back against the fear. The evidence was secure. Witnesses were speaking up. Federal authorities were moving. Whatever happened next, the conspirators had lost their grip on the narrative. She checked her phone. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of notifications, but one new message stood out. "Lieutenant Devin Reed, need to meet urgently. Have final proof that will end this. Come alone for see." Serena showed the text to Voss. His expression darkened. "After everything today, he expects you to trust him." "He might be desperate enough to flip," Serena said. "Or desperate enough to try removing you from the equation before morning," Voss countered. Serena stared at the message, weighing decades of corruption against the possibility of one man's conscience. The night stretched dark beyond Vivian's windows. Hours still to go before dawn brought whatever justice waited there. At 1:30 in the morning, Serena checked her tactical vest while Voss loaded a backup weapon. The streetlights cast long shadows across Vivian's front yard. Too quiet. No cars, no dogs barking. Even the news vans had cleared out. "I don't like this," Vivian said, gripping Avery's shoulders. "You stay here with the evidence copies. No arguments." "But Mom," Avery clutched her laptop. "Your mother's right," Voss said, adjusting his earpiece. "If Reed's really flipping, we need you safe and monitoring communications." Serena touched the family photo in her vest pocket. Her father, in his dress uniform, smiling at her graduation. The same determination that had gotten her through the siege steadied her now. "We'll meet Reed 2 blocks over. 10 minutes. Max. I've got neighbors watching every approach," Vivian said. "First sign of trouble. We're calling everyone." The night air felt thick, oppressive. Serena's combat instinct screamed danger as she and Voss moved down the shadowed sidewalk. No crickets chirping. No distant traffic. Wrong. The attack came without warning. Police SUVs shot out from 3 side streets, cutting off escape routes. Deputies in tactical gear poured onto the block, shouting, "Protective detention! Stand down!" Their movements were too coordinated, too rehearsed. "Run!" Voss shoved Serena toward a gap between houses. A deputy tackled him from behind. 2 more grabbed his arms. "Federal investigator!" Voss struggled as they dragged him toward an unmarked van. "You have no authority!" A hand clamped over his mouth. The van door slammed. Serena sprinted back toward Vivian's house. More shouts erupted behind her, screams from the backyard. Through gaps in houses, she glimpsed shadows moving through Vivian's garden. "Mom!" Avery's voice sharp with terror. Serena changed direction, vaulting a fence, but she was too far. Through the darkness, she saw deputies forcing Avery into a second vehicle. Her laptop scattered on the ground. "Let her go!" Serena's fury exploded as she charged the group. A deputy moved to block her on Vivian's porch steps. Serena's military training took over. She deflected his grab, used his momentum to slam him into the railing. Wood cracked. The deputy went down, clutching his shoulder. More vehicles screamed around the corner. Serena dove through hedges into the side yard as flashlight beams cut through branches. Radio static crackled. "Officer down! Suspect armed and violent!" The lies started immediately. "All units respond. Attempted murder of law enforcement." "No!" Vivian's voice rang out from her front door. "Everyone record this. They're kidnapping witnesses." But the vehicles were already pulling away, taking Voss and Avery into the darkness. Neighbors spilled onto porches with phones raised. Too late. Serena pressed against the shadows of her house, pulse hammering. Police frequencies erupted with coordinated deception. "Be advised, suspect Ellison attacked officers during lawful protective custody. Armed and dangerous. Believed to possess stolen classified materials. Shot fired at deputies. Suspect fled. Scene." The false narrative spread like poison. Within minutes, news alerts pinged on phones up and down the street. Breaking. Woman attacks officers, flees with military documents. Wanted armed suspect assaults police during evidence recovery. Manhunt. Former soldier shoots deputy, escapes custody. Serena's phone vibrated. "Vivian. They're gone. Neighbors recording everything. What do we do?" Another message flashed, a news update showing Brooks at an emergency press conference. The suspect turned violent when officers attempted to secure evidence related to an ongoing federal investigation. She attacked deputies without provocation and fled with classified materials. "We asked the public to avoid contact and report any sightings immediately." The photos they used made Serena look crazed, dangerous. Her military ID photo distorted into a mugshot. Her earlier resistance to the siege reframed as proof of instability. In her darkened house, Serena leaned against the wall, mind racing. Everything had flipped in minutes. Voss had vanished into an unmarked van. Avery had been taken by men with badges and no paperwork. The morning's triumph twisted into a manhunt narrative. She touched her father's photo again. The same forces that had destroyed him were coming for his granddaughter now, and they had just turned Serena's desperate defense of her child into a weapon against her. Through the window, she watched more patrol cars filling the streets, deputies taking witness statements controlling the story. Neighbors who had supported her hours ago now looked uncertain, frightened. The false summit had shattered. In one savage turn, they had taken her allies, her daughter, and her credibility. Dawn was still hours away, but Serena knew the night's true darkness was just beginning. The beam of a police spotlight swept across Serena's yard for the third time in 10 minutes. She pressed against the shadow of her house, counting seconds between patrols. 23 minutes since they took Avery. 31 since Voss disappeared into that unmarked van. When the cruiser passed, Serena slipped to the side window she always kept unlocked, an old army habit that had saved her more than once. The hinges moved silently as she eased inside. Her boots touched the floor without a sound. Her phone vibrated. "Vivian. Coast clear. Coming over. Found something." Serena's tactical vest felt heavy against her ribs as she moved through the darkness of her own home. Family photos watched from the walls. Her father in uniform. Avery's high school graduation. 3 generations of strength and survival. Now, she was alone in these rooms again, a fugitive in her own house. Another patrol car rolled past. Serena stayed low, remembering the siege from just hours earlier. How quickly everything had shifted from victory to disaster. The same officers who had surrounded her home in daylight were now hunting her in darkness. A soft tap at the back door. Vivian's signal. Serena led her neighbor inside, noting how the retired judge's usual dignified posture had transformed into something harder, more focused. "They're still circling every few minutes," Vivian whispered. "But I have something they don't know about." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black device. "From the siege this afternoon. One of the deputies dropped it when state investigators showed up. Serena recognized it immediately, a mobile sync unit for downloading body cam footage. I grabbed it before they could notice it was missing. Vivian's eyes gleamed. It was still actively copying when I found it. Serena's pulse quickened as she took the device. Standard department issue meant to back up footage in the field. If it had been running during the siege, she connected it to her laptop using backup power to stay off the grid. File fragments appeared. Corrupted video, but the audio was intact. Serena's fingers flew across the keys, extracting timestamps. The first clip crackled with Brooks's voice. "No warrant yet. Harlan says we can't wait for processing. Move in now." "Got you," Serena whispered. She kept digging through files. Harlan's distinctive growl. "Find that drive before state gets here. Kane wants everything cleared." Then another voice, smooth and cultured. Had to be Councilman Victor Kane himself. "If she keeps resisting, we move the girl. Clean facility outside town, off books." Serena's hands clenched. They had planned to take Avery all along. The siege, the pressure campaign, Reed's betrayal, it was all orchestrated to force her hand. "There's more," Vivian said. She pulled a folded paper from her sleeve. "Voss dropped this when they grabbed him. I think he meant for us to find it." Serena smoothed out the county map. Voss's hurried marks showed patrol routes, timing notes, and one location circled in red, an abandoned sheriff's department training facility 10 miles outside town. "The clean facility," Serena breathed. "That's where they took them." She cross-referenced the map against her memory of county radio patterns. 3 years as an emergency logistics analyst had taught her how departments moved, how they timed routes and coordinated vehicles. The training site was perfect, remote enough to hide illegal detention, but close enough to maintain quick response times. The audio fragments confirmed it. Background radio chatter matched known patrol schedules. Vehicle noise patterns suggested regular routes between the facility and town. Even the warehouse meeting had referenced supply runs to that sector. "They're experienced at hiding things out there," Serena said, marking access points on the map. "But they've never hidden from someone who knows their habits." She placed her father's photo beside the laptop. His eyes seemed to watch her as she worked, reminding her of everything he had taught her about preparation and patience. Dawn was approaching. The first pale light touched the windows as Serena compiled her evidence. The body cam audio proved the siege was illegal. The facility location explained the kidnappings. Together, they formed a chain of conspiracy that even Brooks could not twist into a manhunt narrative. But evidence alone was not enough. They still had Avery. They still had Voss. And every minute Serena waited increased the risk that they would be moved or silenced. She touched her father's face in the photo. He had faced the same choice years ago. Expose the truth or protect his family. They had destroyed him for choosing truth. Now, they expected her to break the same way. Through the window, she saw another patrol car roll past slower this time, hunting her, expecting her to run or hide or surrender. The sky was beginning to brighten. Soon, the morning news would spread Brooks's lies about a dangerous fugitive attacking officers. But Serena was not running anymore. She spread the map wider, marking entry points and patrol timing. Her military training merged with her analyst's eye, seeing patterns and possibilities. They thought they had trapped her. Instead, they had given her everything she needed: proof, motivation, and a clear target. The first ray of sunrise touched her father's photo as Serena began to plan. The first orange rays of dawn crept through Vivian's dining room windows. Coffee cups dotted the polished oak table, untouched and cold. No one had slept. 6 people hunched over laptops and phones: Serena, Vivian, 2 Vietnam-era veterans from the church, and a pair of deacons who had witnessed the siege. 3 separate cloud servers, Serena said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion. Each file package releases automatically if I don't enter a code every 2 hours. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, organizing the evidence. The body cam audio from the porch, the warehouse footage of Brooks and Kane, her father's brass Locust files, showing the weapons technology pipeline. Deacon Williams nodded, his weathered face grim. Already got 15 witnesses ready to move on your signal. Good folks who won't back down. Position them here and here. Serena marked locations on the map far enough from the training facility to stay legal, close enough to document everything. She checked her watch. Once the evidence started releasing, Brooks and Kane would know they were exposed. That was when they would try to move Avery. "They'll expect you to attack at night," said Pastor Ellis, one of the veterans. "Coming in daylight throws their playbook." A soft knock interrupted them. Vivian checked the security camera she had installed after the garage fire. Her breath caught. "It's Voss." Serena moved to the door, gun ready. But when Vivian opened it, Voss stumbled in, his face bruised and his suit torn. Dried blood crusted his temple. "They had me in a county holding room," he gasped as they helped him to a chair. "Heard deputies talking about moving your daughter at sunrise. I got loose during a shift change." Serena's hand tightened on his shoulder. "Avery, is she alive?" "Still at the training site. They're keeping her in the old equipment garage." He accepted a water bottle with shaking hands. "But Reed, they killed him an hour ago. Made it look like suicide." The room went silent. Serena closed her eyes briefly. "He was trying to help at the end, wasn't he?" Voss nodded. "They had his son on drug charges, threatened to send the boy to state prison if Reed didn't cooperate. When he finally broke and tried to warn us, he did not need to finish." Serena returned to the laptop, her movements precise and controlled. She would not let Reed's death be meaningless. The evidence had to reach the right people at the right moment. "Federal prosecutors," she said, uploading the first package. "State Police Internal Affairs, 3 national media outlets, and my father's old Pentagon contacts." Each file landed in a secure dead drop, timed to release unless she stopped it. Vivian coordinated with the deacons, mapping witness positions around the training facility. "My clerk friends at the courthouse are ready. The moment anything happens to you, they file emergency motions in 3 jurisdictions." The veterans studied the facility layout. "Guard rotation likely follows standard sheriff's department shifts," Pastor Ellis said. "Changing over right about now." Voss struggled to his feet. "I can show you the blind spots. They didn't hood me on the way in." He swayed but stayed upright. "I'm going back with you." "No." Serena's voice was firm. "You need medical attention, and I need you here to trigger the releases if something goes wrong." She opened her father's old duffel bag. The disassembled pistol gleamed dully as she checked each piece. Not a weapon of vengeance, but of protection, of survival. "Remember the siege," Vivian said softly. "You beat them with discipline then. Same thing now." Serena nodded, loading spare magazines with mechanical precision. Each motion was measured, each decision calculated. Brooks and his men expected emotion to make her reckless. Instead, she would use their own procedures against them. The sun climbed higher, painting the room in hard morning light. Serena sent the final confirmation text to the witness network. Doctors, lawyers, clergy, veterans. People the town could not easily dismiss. They would gather quietly, phones ready, surrounding the training facility in a ring of surveillance. "Timeline set," she said, checking the evidence dead drops one last time. 2 hours from now, everything releases unless I stop it. They'll have to move fast once they realize. Voss gave her the updated facility codes he had memorized. Vivian hugged her fiercely. The veterans offered quiet words of support, their eyes showing they understood exactly what she faced. Serena stepped onto the porch, squinting in the full dawn light. The street was empty. Patrols had eased off, thinking she had fled town. They never expected her to move in broad daylight. "Ready?" she asked Voss, who insisted on driving her despite his injuries. He nodded grimly. "Time to bring them into the light." Vivian watched them pull away, then turned to her laptop. The evidence timer blinked steadily on the screen. In 2 hours, truth would begin cascading through every level of power in the county. She placed her hand on the keyboard, ready to activate the sequence that would force justice into the open. The morning sun climbed higher over Maple Grove as Serena's car moved steadily toward the county line, carrying her straight toward the people who had tried to bury both truth and family in darkness. The county training facility sprawled across 5 dusty acres, its chain-link perimeter glinting in the late morning sun. Concrete buildings and weathered storage sheds dotted the grounds, casting harsh shadows across packed dirt and old firing ranges. From their position on the service road, Serena and Voss studied the layout through binoculars. 4 vehicles by the main building, Voss whispered, his injuries making his breathing shallow. 2 sheriff's department, 1 unmarked SUV, and what looks like private security. Serena tracked movement through her scope. Men in tactical gear carried boxes between buildings, while others established defensive positions. Their urgency confirmed they knew the evidence dead drops were ticking. Voss pointed to a low equipment garage. That's where they're holding Avery. 2 guards rotating patterns. Serena measured angles and cover spots. Her military training surfaced automatically. A maintenance shed offered Voss a protected firing position, with clear lines across the yard. The old concrete berms could give her concealment for a close approach. "Remember," she said, checking her father's pistol one final time, "we're not here for revenge. Control your shots. Wound if you have to, but no killing unless there's no choice." Voss nodded, sweat beading on his bruised face. "Vivian's people are 7 minutes out. Federal response maybe 15. They split up, Voss moving through tall grass toward the maintenance shed while Serena circled wide around the perimeter. The morning heat pressed down as she crossed open ground between cover spots, timing her movements to match guard rotations. Through breaks in the buildings, she glimpsed Brooks pacing near the main entrance, barking into a phone. 3 private contractors in unmarked tactical gear moved equipment into a van, burning the evidence just as they had feared. Serena reached the first berm and pressed against sun-warmed concrete. 20 yards ahead, the equipment garage stood dark and silent. She raised her small signal mirror, catching light through a narrow window. After 3 seconds, an answering flash came from inside. Avery was alert and watching. "Good girl." A burst of static from the facility's external speakers made everyone freeze. The emergency broadcast system was activating across the county. Then Brooks' own voice filled the air, the damning body cam audio from the siege now playing on every police and emergency channel in the state. "No warrant. Find the drive before state arrives. Kane wants this contained." Chaos erupted. One deputy immediately threw down his weapon, hands raised. Others looked to Brooks in confusion. The private contractors shifted uneasily, realizing their employer's name was now radioactive. Serena used the distraction to close the final distance to the garage. Through the window, she saw Avery working at the electrical panel despite her bound hands. Smart Girl had found a way to reach the gate controls. The main gate's motor whined and died. Vehicle after vehicle died as Avery killed power to the entire facility. Brooks's escape route was sealed. "Federal agents incoming," someone shouted from the perimeter. Multiple units, lights and sirens. Councilman Victor Kane emerged from the main building, his polished facade cracking. "Everyone stay calm. This can still be managed." A shot cracked across the yard, Voss providing cover fire from the maintenance shed. The private contractors scattered for defensive positions. Return fire hammered the shed's metal walls. Serena burst through the garage's side door as 2 deputies rushed to stop her. She dropped the first with a shot to the leg, disarmed the second with a precise strike to the wrist. No killing, just control. "Mom," Avery called from behind a tool cabinet. "Stay down." Serena moved to cover her daughter as bullets punched through windows. More sirens wailed in the distance. The body cam audio kept playing, drowning out Kane's attempts to restore order. 2 more deputies surrendered, placing their weapons on the ground. Serena cut Avery's restraints. "Can you move?" "Yeah. I memorized their radio codes. Got the gate frequencies. Figured you'd come." Pride surged through Serena's chest. Her daughter had stayed strong, stayed smart. An engine roared outside. Brooks had reached a vehicle and was trying to ram through the dead gate. The metal barrier held. "It's over, Colton," Kane shouted. "We need to negotiate." "Shut up!" Brooks abandoned the vehicle and ran back toward the garage, pistol raised. His carefully maintained mask had shattered completely. Serena pushed Avery behind a heavy workbench. Voss's covering fire kept the remaining contractors pinned down. Through the windows, she glimpsed multiple vehicles approaching on the main road. Vivian's witness convoy arriving right on schedule. Brooks burst through the garage door, wild-eyed and sweating. His weapon swung toward them as federal sirens screamed closer. "You think you've won?" he snarled. "You think exposing this fixes anything?" "It's done," Serena said calmly. "The truth is already out there. Every channel, every jurisdiction." His finger tightened on the trigger. Serena shifted, placing herself firmly between the gun and her daughter. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing fear. "Last chance, Sheriff," she said. "There are witnesses coming, cameras, federal agents. How do you want this to end?" Brooks's gun clattered across the concrete floor as Serena's precise strike knocked it from his grip. His face twisted with rage, but before he could lunge, 2 shots rang out from Voss's position. Kane's lead security contractor dropped, clutching his shoulder. "Mom!" Avery broke free, stumbling into Serena's waiting arms. Mother and daughter clung to each other as sirens wailed and tires screeched outside the fence. State police vehicles poured through the main entrance, lights flashing in the late morning sun. Federal SUVs flanked them, agents deploying in practice formation. Behind them, a convoy of civilian cars and news vans rolled to a stop, Vivian's witnesses arriving right on schedule. Brooks sprinted for his patrol car, abandoning Kane and his remaining men. He made it 3 steps before tactical officers tackled him to the dusty ground. His polished badge skittered across the dirt as they secured his wrists with heavy cuffs. "This is a mistake!" Kane shouted, backing away from approaching federal agents. "Do you know who I am? I fund half the programs in this county." "Victor Kane," an agent called out. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, corruption, and kidnapping under color of authority." Cameras flashed as they led him away. His expensive suit was stained with sweat, his carefully maintained image crumbling with each step. Voss emerged from the maintenance shed, pressing a hand to his injured side. "Your father would be proud," he told Serena. "He died protecting evidence of brass Locust, knowing someday someone would finish what he started." Avery kept filming as federal teams secured the grounds. "Everything's documented," she said. "The siege, the warehouse meeting, the body cam audio, even the county-issued earpiece from the ambush. It all connects." Vivian ducked under the crime scene tape, ignoring orders to stay back. She wrapped both Serena and Avery in a fierce embrace. "I told them all morning, keep watching, keep recording. The truth had to come out in broad daylight." News helicopters circled overhead as state investigators processed the scene. Local stations interrupted regular programming to show Brooks and Kane being loaded into separate vehicles. The body cam audio from the original siege played on repeat across every channel. "No warrant. Find the drive. Kane wants this contained." By early afternoon, the story had exploded. National media descended on Maple Grove, broadcasting live from the same streets where armed men had tried to intimidate a neighborhood into silence. Headlines flashed across screens. Brass Locust exposed. Military tech theft ring operating through local law enforcement. Decorated veteran vindicated. Whistleblower's daughter breaks conspiracy. Teen journalist's evidence brings down corrupt officials. Serena stood on her front porch, the same porch where 15 illegal officers had demanded entry just the day before. Workers repaired the damage from the siege while cameras rolled. The house that conspirators thought would be their easiest target had become the symbol of their downfall. Voss gave statements confirming the truth about Serena's father. He had discovered military targeting systems were being stolen and sold through police training programs. When soldiers died in a compromised test, he refused to stay quiet. They destroyed his reputation to bury the evidence, but he protected the proof until someone could expose it all. Vivian received a standing ovation at an emergency community meeting. "We are not powerless," she declared. "When we stand together and bear witness, justice becomes unstoppable." Avery's raw footage and detailed documentation drew praise from veteran journalists. News directors and editors called her reporting crucial and extraordinarily thorough under pressure. Neighbors who had watched in fear now gathered openly on the street, sharing stories with reporters. Veterans who had doubted Serena's father years ago came to apologize. Church leaders who had witnessed the siege organized support for families targeted by intimidation. As evening settled over Maple Grove, the mood shifted from tension to celebration. Where armed men had formed a perimeter of fear, children now played freely on front lawns. The same neighbors who had filmed through windows now shared food and embraces on front porches. Serena stood on her newly repaired porch as golden sunset light washed across the street. Avery leaned against her shoulder, finally allowing exhaustion to show. Vivian sat in her usual chair, maintaining her witness post out of habit now rather than necessity. Voss rested against the railing, his injuries treated but his vigilance unwavering. Together, they watched their community reclaim the space that corruption had tried to poison. Parents walked with children who had hidden in fear just hours ago. Elderly residents who had been afraid to speak now shared decades of stories about the neighborhood's history. Young activists who had documented everything worked with journalists to prevent similar abuses elsewhere. The house remained exactly where it had always been, a cornerstone of the community, a tribute to a father's sacrifice, and now a symbol of what ordinary people could accomplish when they refused to surrender to intimidation. The same walls that had sheltered Serena's methodical resistance now stood as a monument to justice served in broad daylight. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.